You're listening to the Governors Podcast, which is hosted by school governors for school governors and for all involved in or impacted by education governance. On the Governors Podcast, we have open, honest, and transparent discussions about governance in the UK education sector, sharing and providing insights into the realities of entering the boardroom, sitting around the governing board table, and leaning in.
Hello, I'm Sharon Warmington, and as an experienced and qualified governance professional, I support schools and academies at trust and local level in driving governance excellence. I'm also the founder of the National Black Governors Network and the National Association of School and College Clerks. Collectively, with sector partners, we work with individuals and organisations seeking positive change at a strategic and operational level.
Hey, it's Olivia D. Hines here, an unapologetic millennial Black woman who is changing the face and space of education governance. I specialise in brand management, digital strategy, and generational diversity, bringing governance into the 21st century. I'm purpose-led and people-focused, bridging the gap between the then and the now.
And you're listening to the Governors Podcast.
Okay, let's get into today's episode.
For this episode's agenda item, we have invited Dr. Karl George MBE to the Governors Podcast and its virtual boardroom so that we can discuss governance across sectors from his perspective. Dr. Karl George MBE is a thought leader and international expert in governance. Karl is a visiting professor, has an honorary doctorate, and is an established author and conference speaker. He is a partner and head of governance at the leading professional services firm, RSM. As the creator of TGF's Governance Code, the Race Equality Code, and the Effective Board Member Programmes, Karl works with boards and senior executives in the private, public, and voluntary sectors. He has over 30 years combined experience in accountancy, business, and strategic development. Karl is a qualified accountant and fellow of the global international body for governance practitioners, the Chartered Governance Institute. He has developed a unique governance framework and quality mark that was endorsed by the late Sir Adrian Cadbury. And Karl's latest book, Governance 3.0, provides an international perspective on modern governance. Amongst his other books is the Amazon bestseller, The Effective Board Member, which talks about what every board member should know.
Welcome, Karl. Thank you for joining us. We're sure our listeners are looking forward to hearing from another voice within the education governance space.
Hi, good afternoon. It's a fantastic opportunity to do the thing that I love doing, which is talk about corporate governance. So, as you know, I'm the guy who gets tingly about it. I'm the guy who likes to speak about. A little bit like when I used to talk about accountancy and numbers, and I used to say that accountancy and numbers are sexy. But now I'm able to talk about corporate governance and why it's important and why we need to understand it, make sure we're applying it, and make sure we can use the best governance principles in every area of our lives. But I'll talk about that afterwards because we want to talk about education today, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And I'm so glad you started like that, because I remember when I was on your corporate governance course and you talked about getting tingly about governance. And if I'm honest, in the beginning, I was like, I don't know what.
Yeah,
what
don't get it.
It is. I didn't get it. Now, 6-7 years in, I'm like, I get it. I totally get it. And so it's
7 years already.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's been that long. I think it was 2017 when I took the exam, the corporate governance course exam that you
I remember you smashed it, Olivia.
Thank
I'm really
you.
proud of what you've done.
Thank you. Honestly, it's such an honor to have you here because you literally are a part of like why I'm in governance now. Like I have so many flowers to give you that I am just so grateful for where governance has taken me. So being able to have this conversation with you today is extremely exciting for me as your former student. And I would say, if anything, I'm still your student because I'm still learning from you. So if anything, I'm just like, what else could I learn today? So the very first question I want to ask you
Okay.
is, how can you sum up your current role and experience for our listeners?
I can, but I'm gonna have to start back a little bit before I get to my current role.
Go ahead.
That's
You
okay.
know that I've worked for myself my whole life almost. So when I started in accountancy, I started in industry. I worked, in fact, when I started, and I digress right at the beginning, I didn't even have a desk to work, and I worked underneath the desk. In the,
Wow.
no, I'm joking, I'm joking. But I
I
want to
was
say
gonna
that
say, how?
I started at the very bottom. I was a wages clerk, and then I did a bit of accounts and worked my way up to becoming the financial accountant, and get your own office and so on. But it exposed me to an area that meant that had a particular discipline that lots of voluntary sector type organizations would want, and that discipline was finance. Everybody wanted an accountant on their board
They
if they
still
were a
do.
voluntary organization. So that got me into governance, even though I didn't know it, because I had a
Mm-hmm.
problem saying no. People would say, Carl, I'd be flattered. Do you want to join our board? And I'd go, yeah, I'll do that. I did a lot of work in the community. So lots of community organizations would say, could you help us out? So that started off in my career. I ran my accountancy practice, which was aimed at the African Caribbean business community. That was my
Mm-hmm.
niche area.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't big enough to develop where I wanted to go. So I had to go a little bit more mainstream afterwards. So
Okay.
my practice, then I merged with another practice that had been going for 75 years.
Wow.
I read a book by Richard Branson and all about business and so on, his autobiography. And he talked about a reverse takeover. And I went, you know what? That's what I want to do. So I kind of did this reverse takeover where, although they'd been going to 75 years, I became the managing director, and I ran this practice. And that got me into the mainstream where I wanted to be. And around that time, and it seems like a long time now, and it must be because I was Young Professional of the Year and all these different things.
Oh, wow.
I was the guy
I
out there.
remember those. That was in the 90s, yeah?
That's right. That was the time when we had the David Craigs of this world
Yeah.
that we were mutually knew, didn't we, Sharon?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so so I say all of that because the journey that it took me on
Yeah.
was being this finance professional,
Mm-hmm.
someone from the African Caribbean community who was kind of first generation here, so able to articulate well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that put me in demand, young, black, accountant. And it got me into this space, which I now call corporate governance. But then it was just I was serving on boards and helping people out strategically.
Okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed it. I really like giving back to the community. It wasn't about remuneration. It wasn't about what I was going to get out of it. At that time, it was me giving back. And that
Mm-hmm.
really meant that I was able to help lots of different sectors, lots of different organizations, and get really good experience for
Yeah.
what would come afterwards. And what came afterwards is I said, I'm the accountant that never wanted to be an accountant. Do you know that?
I did not know that. Wow.
Neither did I.
Yeah, Granny told me you're going to be an accountant. Uh, I think when I was about 7, I would have said to you, I want to be an accountant, a cowboy, not a cowboy accountant, by the way, um, or a footballer.
Okay.
That's what I'd have had. And the only reason I said accountant, because Granny said, you're going to be an accountant.
Yeah,
Okay.
you had
Happened
to
to
have
be
a
good at
trade. Yeah.
happened to be good at maths and left brain, so it kind of worked well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just carried on down that route. But my gift probably, and it is subjective, but lots of people have told me, is the ability to communicate, to speak, and to teach.
Definitely.
And that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be probably a teacher, lecturer, but unfortunately, I qualified as an accountant. I passed my finals in a record space of time.
Okay.
And that's relevant because the college that I was studying at said, how did you do that, Carl? How did you get through your finals in 12 weeks? It's almost impossible. And funnily enough, my son is now doing his ACCA finals, and he's got 4 papers to do,
Uh-huh.
and he's doing one every 3 months kind of thing.
Okay.
I said, son, when I did them, I did all 4 in 12 weeks. But anyway, that's another discussion.
Not that at-home competition.
Nothing like that at all. Nothing like that at all. So what that did is it established me in an area that I could start to use across the board. It established a discipline that I wanted, but it wasn't really where my gift was. So although I was good at accounts, I didn't help my clients and the account side of their business. I helped them more with the development, and my
Right.
staff would do the account side of the business. I was more, how can I help you with leadership? How can I help you more with strategy? Which is relatively very, very similar to what we do in the boardroom.
Yeah.
So I decided to sell my accountancy practice and set up a consultancy. And that consultancy, back 15 years ago or so, was the Governance Forum. I became a specialist in corporate governance. I needed to rebrand because I used to be this activist kind of out there with the community.
Yeah.
Then I was the black accountant. I needed to rebrand as the accountant then because I was in mainstream.
Yeah.
But now to stop telling people I'm an accountant, no, I'm not. I'm a governance specialist.
Of course, changing hats can be so complex, especially when people get so used to seeing you through a certain lens. When you're like, no, this is the move I'm making, this is the pivot I'm making. You have to take people on that journey to shift their view of you. And so I'm so glad you spoke about rebranding, because there's a lot of people, whether you're in education or not, who I feel like you need to understand what your current brand is, because everyone has a personal brand, and know that when you change your brand internally, that doesn't mean that everyone shifts at the same rate at you as you. There's work to be done in order to move them with you to see you the way that you want them to see you. So I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, we digress slightly, but I think this is an important.
Go ahead.
I remember speaking to someone once. He was telling me all about his accountant, how they were not doing the stuff he wanted him to do, why he needed to get better out of them, thinking that he's telling me all of that to ask me to do his accountancy work. And at the end of the discussion, he didn't ask me, and I went, why do you tell me that? You know I'm an accountant, don't you? And he went, oh, I didn't know you was an accountant. I thought you were an activist. So that's why I stopped doing it. He said, right, I'm going to market myself as an accountant.
Okay.
When I decided to do governance, I'd already experience of saying, this is how I'm going to rebrand. That's where I came up with the governor. It's almost like, this is Karl George, and he's the governor.
He's the governor. Yeah, that's how we know you.
Yeah.
Corporate governance. And you know what? I wrote down, Sharon and Olivia, I wrote down what it would mean, what it would look like. I had a picture of what this international governance expert is. And I didn't used to tell people it. I just wanted to hear people say it back to me. And you know when I'd landed it is when I got a call from Lebanon, of all places. Somebody saying, I've heard you're the international expert on corporate governance. We're pulling together people from top universities around the world, academics, and we want to fly you out to come on this leadership program to teach our participants. And I heard you're the guy who gets tingly about corporate governance. The brand have actually worked out. Somebody, I don't know how they found me, but they found the guy who decided to create that brand. That's when I know I'd cracked it.
That's phenomenal. That shows that when you invest in a brand, and investment could be anything, time, energy, money, effort. When you invest in it, I like the fact that you said that it wasn't about you pushing the brand. It's about people recognizing the brand and saying it back to you, because then that tells you it's been established externally. It goes beyond self. And so that is brilliant.
And that dovetails into when we talk about schools, the mission, the vision, the values, that it's not what it's how it's set at a strategic level, it's how it's seen at a wider level in the stakeholder group. So yeah, that messaging has come through loud and clear. Keep going. I'm enjoying this. I've known you a long time and I didn't know some of this.
Well, there's another thing I do when I talk to people about networking and branding, since we're going there a little bit. And I say it's not what you know, it's who you know, as everybody knows that. It's who you know and your networks that you develop. But the second part of it, it's not who you know, but who knows you. So you've got to make sure that you get yourself out there by doing and raising your profile, writing blogs, coming onto podcasts like this that are internationally recognized and well known with these great facilitators to raise your profile.
Thank you.
So you do all those things so people get to know who you are, but you've got to make sure it's not who you know and who knows you, but what they're saying about you that's important. So keep your integrity. I like to say, make sure people know, like, trust, respect what you do. So make sure you become an authority, stay on authority, and do things well.
I love that, because I learn a lot from so many other people. And you say integrity and it makes me think of the all Lisa, you know, I'm already there. I'm being thrown back to my student days, learning the core principles, and also about just reputation, the power of your reputation. Like, I feel like you can rise and fall on your reputation, what people know about you, what people feel when they experience you, because you can be a great leader, but you're not necessarily a great leader doing the best things. So you're known for the wrong reasons. And so it's very important for you to know how people perceive you and how you show up. And as you say, stand on authority, ensure you're consistent, show up, be true, be authentic, be real. And so that's what this podcast was created for, to reach more people we don't know who are out there, but just to make it more tangible. But we come as our individual selves. We know that there is no other podcast like us, because Sharon's Sharon and Olivia's Olivia, and we show up with our personalities. And so we put the fun into governance and we're bringing it to other people, compared to what other people may do, which may feel very different, let's say, to how we deliver. And so I like the fact that you're bringing yourself to every space. So when you were an activist, you were an activist. When you were an accountant, you were an accountant. And now, as the governor, you show up fully and you're like, this is the hat I'm wearing and this is what I can do for you. Now let's move forward. So I love that. I'm loving this journey.
Absolutely. So absolutely. So right up to today, then, I know that you shifted gear again a couple of years ago, Karl. Do you want to just let our listeners know what happened there?
Yes. So my business reached a stage where I wanted to next move in the mainstream for a number of other areas. I'd achieved certain things as my own business. And I decided, because I was a subject matter expert for some of the big accountancy firms, PwC, the biggest in the world, being one of them, and locally or nationally, I should say, RSM, who are about sixth largest in the world. I used to do a lot of work with both of them. When they had governance assignments, I'd be the subject matter expert to help to lead a tender or to deliver an assignment or training of board members. And we jokingly say over the years, RSM, why don't you just come across, Karl? You're one of us. And I'd go, no, you can't afford me, or now I'm unemployable, or I've always worked for myself, because I literally started my business at the age of 23. So I've kind of, I've never worked for anyone.
Yeah.
But we made the decision for me to help them to form an ESG department. So those of you out there don't know what that acronym stands for, you need to
know.
It's environment, it's social, and then it's governance. So those three key areas, we were developing a department 2 years ago. I joined to help start that department. and I was the governance lead. I would become the governance lead nationally for RSM, but be part of this ESG team. And in the S space, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure. I developed something called a race equality code. And that race equality code is one of the areas we fulfill our DEI or EDI, another acronym,
Yeah.
Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion responsibilities around looking at the representation of people from ethnic minorities, but in board and in senior leadership teams. That's my passion. Let's look
Yeah.
at the leadership.
Yes.
So cut a long story short, 2 years ago, I decided I would sell my practice to RSM. I would become a partner. I would work and represent them in the ESG space, but heading up corporate governance, and then do all the things that I've been doing over the years through the RSM vehicle. So that's right.
Wow.
Wow.
That is a journey and a half. And for anybody who knows me, I often call your name. I as you've mentioned, from the 90s, I've been involved in governance since, Sir Adrian Cadbury wrote his report. But what I know of governance and corporate governance today is down to our friendship, our professional relationship, and the training that I've done on your courses. So I give you flowers too in that respect. Because when I want to know anything, I call Karl. Karl is the only person I will answer the phone to on a Saturday, and he knows it. And he also knows that if he needs me to do anything, then I will drop everything and do what I need to do for him. So I've got a huge amount of respect for you and the work that you do in this space. And so it was an easy conversation to have to invite you onto the podcast. What I'm interested in our listeners understanding a bit more is what the similarities are and what the differences are of governance across different sectors, because you don't just work across different sectors, you work across different continents. And through you, I've been exposed to some of that, having done some work with the Emirates Post Group and the Jordan Tourism Board. That experience taught me a lot in terms of governance. But in your own words, what would you say are the similarities and the differences?
I'll start, Sharon, with something to give you some flowers. I'll start with saying, I remember lots of people talking to me about wanting to learn about governance, wanting to get support, wanting to pivot, as you said earlier, Olivia. But Sharon, I remember saying, oh, I've got a course. Book yourself on the course. And you took your money, you paid to come on the course, and you said, if I'm going to do something, I want to learn how to do it properly. And I said, I'm taking it, although we knew each other as friends, you professionally said, I'm going to book myself on the course, I'm going to do the course, and I'm going to learn. And I start by saying, because your role it was executive support,
Assistant, yeah.
executive assistant.
Yeah.
And in that role, you do a lot of that type of work anyway on behalf of a chief executive. And you had the ability to understand, but you say, I'm going to go away and I'm going to learn. And you had lots of experience in schools as well. You're saying, right, what can I learn so I can take it across sectors? And then when I came up with these assignments, I say, Sharon, help. And these are very big assignments. You know about the post office at the moment and the controversy that's going on.
Yeah.
Post group is the equivalent in size of a client that you helped me to do all
Yeah.
of their governance with. And what I wanted to first say about governance is the principles are exactly the same, whether they're in the private, the public, or the voluntary sector. That was a listed company we were working on there, or the list. And the same principles that we'd have in a small academy or a small school are the same principles that we'd use in a voluntary organization. So I'm really happy that you were able to come on the program, do the course, and use those transferable skills to then enable you to use corporate governance in the way that it should be used. even at home with our families. I mentioned my son earlier on, but even the way we run our family sometimes, I won't tell you who the chair is and the chief executive. My wife might get a copy of this podcast.
I think I can guess.
And who the non-exec directors are and who the employees are, because and can I say this to our listeners? I'm from a traditional African Caribbean background where when we have children, there's certain things that they must do and have to do. They are the employees. Certain things we don't do because that's what you had children for.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
What are you doing that for? So they're the employees. I'm on the board. So even in a family, I think corporate governance principles are really important. And joking apart, when you actually have a marriage, when you actually are together, you want to find out, well, what are the terms of reference? Who's responsible for what? In my household, it's a little bit different from someone else. It doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just that we understand that I don't do the shopping just because I don't like it. So it's not because I'm a man, just that I did that
don't
when
like
I was growing up. All my years, there's the one thing I don't want to do, wife, is that. So you do that, and then other things I do. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
all of that's governance, isn't it? All of that.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. And the more you spend in governance, the more you realize that your life just operates a lot better when you adopt those principles. It really,
so true.
It really does. And so when we talk about governing in other sectors, I know that a lot of schools look for people who have experience of governance in other sectors, the accountants of this world, the lawyers of this world. But what about those who don't necessarily have that exposure in their day job? They're not at that strategic level, but can still make absolutely phenomenal governors. What would you say to them? How can they tap into what they've got and bring it to the table?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point for those people who've got specific expertise. It may be around digital. We'll probably get onto the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence.
I love it, by the way.
And how it's going to change the world and is changing the world and has changed the world. But if you've got those, and Olivia, with your social media skills and how all of that works, if you've got those skills and you can bring them into the boardroom, that's really important. But there are some core areas of knowledge that you have to have a base level of knowledge in. So everybody has to have a base level of knowledge so that they can interact together in the boardroom collectively and cohesively. And I'll share some of them in a moment. But then you'll have people who've got some specific areas of expertise. And that's how you have a board with a balance of the skills and expertise that you want. So if you haven't got these core areas, then you do a training course, you study, you get some experience in finance. You've got to have a base level of knowledge in finance, because there's going to be financial indicators. In accountancy, we used to say the money measurement concept. We turn everything to money so we can understand it.
Yeah, I hear that.
Secondly, there's HR and people. 90% of organizations you're going to be sitting at are going to have 80% of their income probably to do with people and understanding employment legislation and how we make sure we attract, retain, motivate people. You've got to understand about governance, dare I say it, about rules and regulations and structure. And legal considerations are going to be very important to have a basic understanding of commercial law so you can understand what's going on in an organization. So those are probably four of the fundamental things that you've got to have a base level of knowledge in, and then you can bring your specific expertise to complement the base level that everybody's got. And
I hear that.
You've got a great board then with a broad range of experiences, because everybody should contribute on everything on the agenda so that we're all challenging each other. We have that healthy tension in the boardroom, the professional skepticism, the nose in and the fingers out kind of thing. So that we make sure that we're getting a really, really good, cohesive boardroom.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because earlier you spoke about how you started your business around the age of 23, and 23 was when I got my first post on a strategic board for a school. And it was to go in as the chair of that board, having never done school governance before.
Wow.
But I think it was my, not I think, because to think is to be unsure. That's what I was raised to correct. But I know it was my corporate governance training by yourself that made me come across as qualified to come in as a chair for that board. And it's because when you know those core principles, as you say, it may not be the area of expertise that you have based on the things that you've pursued, but when you do the work, when you join a course or you join a program that will teach you those principles, you can then shape them based on the information you do have. And then that's the value that you come to the table with. So you've got the core principles, you've got your bespoke, personalized element, your specialisms, and then you come to the board and you lean in, which is what I'm picking up from you in terms of
nose in, fingers out. I like that.
It's like really leaning in. And I love the fact that you've mentioned about how you ensure that you challenge each other, because that can so easily be lost when you've got more experienced people around the board, people feeling like, oh, I can't challenge my fellow governor. Yes, you can, especially when there's groupthink going on, ensuring that, I'm just bringing in all my lessons.
And I'm like, the program's replaying in my head.
Literally, I think it's because Karl sat right in front of me. I'm like, I'm back to that boardroom and I'm playing the game and I'm learning the lessons. But yeah, it's ensuring that you stay active and you stay effective in that space. It's not to say that you become troublesome. We're not advocating for that. That's a very different characteristic. But it's that you are present and you're listening to what you're being fed and you're processing it and ensuring that the right questions are being asked at the right time in order to move the conversation forward and ensure that we are being strategic and ensure that no one becomes too complacent, because when you become complacent, it has an impact on those in the school, if you're thinking about a school, or those in the trust or the organization, if you're doing governance in a different sector. So all the things that you're mentioning, it does cause people to pause, to think about them and say, what is my specialism? What do I have already? Whether it's your natural ability or a skill set that you've developed, that you've honed. And then what else do I need in order for me to take a seat at that table and lean in? And I think that's where I had to really reflect and stop seeing my age, being 20, 22, 23, as a barrier, and seeing it as, no, this is my superpower. This is what I'm bringing. I have just come through 20 plus years of education in the 21st century in the UK education system. That's the value I've got. And then, as you say, in terms of my social media and my work with young people and all those kind of things. And so then it's like, okay, I've got that. What else do I need? My core principles. And then I can kind of lean in.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, Olivia, because what you've done is you went away, you did the course, you've added that to what makes you unique and what you're good at. And now you're somebody that people will say, because you've probably 5 years of experience now, as you said, 7 years since we've done it. You've now got the experience as well to go with it, to make sure that you are a governance professional that will be in demand. So
it's scary to think about. I remember the first time I was at a meeting and there was a new governor to the board, and I was like, whoa, I'm not the new person anymore. The first new person after me, I had been on that board, I think 3 years at the time. I was chairing one of the committees, the committee I still chair now. And it was in that moment, sometimes you just get a jolt when another new person joins. You're reminded exactly how further along you've gone. So even just as I say it to you, and as you said it back to me about me being 5, 6, 7 years into governance, it's like even I pause to think about that sometimes. And as you say, it's people coming to me to learn from me. Doesn't mean I'm not still learning, because I am. I'm just not day one anymore. And so I'm helping those who are on day one
whilst I'm on year 6, but then there's someone who is like a decade in, and that's who I'm feeding from. So that's when I look at my own succession planning and stuff. But we can delve into that further into the conversation. But I think the next question I really want to ask you is specifically around education establishments. So organizations that work in the education sector, schools and trusts, because you mentioned earlier about not just diversifying boards, but diversifying strategic leaders as well. So what would you say education establishments can do to support that diversity movement, that diversity drive in all aspects of their organization?
Yeah, that's one of my sweet spots at the moment, speaking about diversity. A bit of a background. When Black Lives Matters movement, that whole time happened, and there was Me Too as well around that time. We were in a pandemic. It was 4 years ago, I know, but that time was really, really life-changing for most of us. But it also got me to stop saying, it weren't imposter syndrome, but it almost was. I kept saying, I'm not from that background of EDI. I'm not a specialist in that area, but I'm a Black man who's lived in this country. In fact, I've started 100 Black Men in 1997. The
I
first
remember that too.
chapter of a organization that's got like 100,000 members, 10,000 chapters. So me saying that I started Professional Diversity, which was an organization that was trying to expand people in the professional and financial services from ethnic minority backgrounds, and Carlton TV's diversity panel. So I said, actually, Carl, you do know a lot about this.
You've done a lot. You've done a lot.
You've done a lot in governance, written a governance code. Remember I said I'm a bit nerdy?
Yeah.
Why not write a governance code for race?
Mm-hmm.
But I start by saying that although the code is specifically aimed at race, it's not to the detriment of any other protected characteristic, because if we can get one right, and if we can deal with underrepresentation in board and senior leadership team around race, the techniques and principles that we learn, we can use them for every other protected characteristic. And disability is another one that's really high up on the agenda that we sometimes don't work well with. Not only people disclosing that they have some kind of disability, but then also making sure they're represented in the leadership. So
absolutely.
So that the first thing I said that the education sector can learn is to make sure that we understand, and I know these terms are starting to get more and more common, is that we make sure people feel that they're included and that they belong, regardless of how they fit onto those protected characteristics. And we don't fit neatly into each one because there's intersectionalities as well. I can be Black and I can also be disabled, if that makes sense, and it makes things different. And also African Caribbean, Indian, Pakistani, but all of us have different idiosyncrasies. We have different ways of responding to the communities that we're in and so on. So it's not simple, but we do want to make sure everybody feels that they are included. And I can remember going to seminars when I was 24, because I was the head of my accountancy practice, and going to other accountancy seminars, and my peers were probably 55 or 60. So there was a barrier there straight away.
Sounds like sounds like education governance to me.
Yeah. So 24-year-old, 25-year-old, even when I was getting older, 30, I've got these white men, and then here's Carl. And you'd been meetings and discussions, and have you ever been there when you've said something, everyone ignores you, and then someone else says the same thing, and they go, great idea. You've been there. And that's where you don't feel like you belong. Because you think like you're fighting all the time to make a point and so on. So trying to make sure people feel like they really belong is more than just saying yes, and they're reading, listening and nodding and ticking, but you don't really feel like you're being listened to. That's what's really important. And I couldn't show up the way I showed up at home. I used to have to put on a mask. I say, right,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to work now. This is how you dress. This is how you speak. And this is
Mm-hmm.
what they expected of me, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
want one, I'm quite quiet. But out there, I had to be this gregarious, Carl's fun. He's the guy who's got joke. I had to do that to play the
Yeah.
game so that I could be able. And then by the time I get home at night, you take it all off. You go,
And you're
Exhausted.
exhausted.
Exhausting.
and what I find I'm able to do now, because I've got a bit of a brand, the governor, because I've established my integrity and so on, I can turn up exactly as I want to turn up. I can be myself. In fact, I come
Mm-hmm.
into the meetings and the boardrooms and so on and just come as Carl. I don't really wear ties anymore, but I can remember the days where I used to do spot checks on people to get ties done up probably from my boys' brigade days. That your tie
Yeah.
done up, your tie done, because I had a young practice and I wanted to demonstrate that this is what we look like, this is how we are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but now, much more flexible because I'm able to show up as myself. That's what
Mm.
inclusion means. That's what belonging means, and that's what we really need to share with the education sector, that we've got to catch up really sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I do a lot of training at governance and leadership level on the area of racial diversity. And the key message that I always make sure that they know and understand is that we bring our difference to make a difference. And we have to
Right.
understand that
Say
you
that again, say that
can't,
again, say that
yeah,
again, say that
we
again. We
we
bring our
bring our
difference
difference
to
to make
make
a
a
difference.
difference.
Because that's what we're there for. You
Yeah.
know, it's not about being the same, because then you're just going to get the same mindset, the same individual, just a different race, different gender or a different disability. But we have to understand that that governance, whilst it remains fundamentally based on its principles, what it looks like is changing, not least because of the digital technology that's taking place now. There is a difference coming down the pipe at a phenomenal rate that is not going to change anytime soon. On that note, I think we should take a break and hear from our sponsors, Governor Hub.
Governor Hub is proud to support the Governor's podcast. As a leading provider of online governance support, we know that confident and well-equipped governors bring about positive and meaningful change. So when you've been inspired to do your best by really leaning in on the topics that matter, you can rely on us for the tools to help your board work better, the guidance and training to develop your skills, and a secure online body of evidence for when it matters most. Visit thehoot.news to join us and feel part of something bigger.
Okay, we're back. Let's continue this amazing conversation. One of the things that came to my mind, Carl, was the term ambassadorial that only I heard firstly from you. And at the time when I heard it, I didn't truly understand what it meant. I do now, but can you just summarize what you mean by the term ambassadorial and what it means in terms of governance in any space in which we occupy?
Yes, you've got a great memory. The acronym was SPARS, where we
That's
talked
it.
about the role of a non-executive director.
Yes.
And the core elements of it I took from Derek Higgs' report in 2003, the role of a non-exec director. But the ambassadorial one is one that I added to Derek Higgs's kind of methodology. So if I was around in 2003 with him, I'd have said, Derek, mate, you need to add ambassadorial in. So let me just lead other ones very quickly, and then I'll
Yeah.
tell you ambassadorial. So S is strategic. So as a non-exec, you need to be strategic. The P is about people and pay. So making sure we get that right with a non-exec independent support to the C-suite. SPA, we'll come back to that. R is risk. So you're the risk appetite of the organization. We set it, we understand it at a strategic level. The S is for scrutiny. So we scrutinize, challenge the executive in the way that we said earlier. And then E is about evaluation of your performance, making sure you evaluate, like you do in other parts of the business, you evaluate your performance. So
Mhm.
back to this A, I believe non-execs, when they take on the role, it's not just in the boardroom. You've got
Yeah.
to be ambassadors to internal and external stakeholders. We've got to understand the culture of the organization, and not for education, but probably is. Mary McLeod Bethune said that as a race, we're heirs and custodians to a great legacy, and
Mhm.
we've got to be stewards of that legacy.
Hear
Mhm.
that?
And I lend that to your role as a trustee. Sometimes, as an organization or as a governor, there's a history and there's a culture that you've got to make sure that you're going to be heirs and custodians over.
Yeah.
So you are the ambassadors for that organization. You're the ambassadors to make sure that you sell the right message. And you don't go into a meeting and say, they decided that in there, but this is
Yeah.
what I'm doing. You're part of that cohesive whole.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if it don't fit, should you be there? If the values, if the ethics, if the moral, if they don't fit in with and align with your values, perhaps that's not the place for you, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I do
Yeah.
believe that people should adopt that kind of mindset. And I do say when I have the Black Governors Network events and we've got prospective members who are looking for roles, I do say to them, even if the school or the trust want you, if you're not feeling that connection,
Yeah.
if there is a disconnect in
Yeah.
any way, shape, or form, then you don't have to take it. It's like a job. If you go
Mhm.
for a job and it doesn't feel right, then you're not necessarily going to take it. You know, you want somewhere where you're going to feel comfortable enough to challenge without being viewed as a troublemaker, to adopt that sparse role so that you are adding value. Otherwise, why are you there? So that is really, really important. Just moving on in terms of those individuals who are interested in governance. I think I sort of fell into it through my PA role, and then getting to know you. Olivia got it through, I'd say, heritage.
Yeah, I did. You passed it on. That was a baton that was passed on generation to generation.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what Karl was saying earlier about who you know.
Who you
And
know, yeah.
Fortunately know you because you're my mum.
Yeah. So that
make
was a
those
simple one.
connections.
But what about those who don't have any kind of exposure to governance the way we know it? How would you advise that they start their journey if they're listening to this?
Yeah, well, one of the ways, and the program you did, Olivia, was our Young Leaders program. We still have effectiveboardmember.co.uk. That website's still there. And I still run that leaders program. We've probably done, I'm going to say in the region of 200 young people now over the years.
That's
that
amazing.
come on a cohort once a year on a Saturday morning, half a day, a month for 5 months.
Yeah.
So we still run that program. So that's a way of people. We give back by delivering that program. Effectiveboardmember.co.uk. So that's one way. But for those of you, because this will go out all over the world.
It does.
So those of you thinking about how do I get into governance, there'll always be a voluntary sector organization, a charity, a small business, a school that needs somebody to bring your professional expertise to help them out. And I think start off small by saying, this is the experience I can bring, and this is what I think I can offer to your organization. And then you go on a program of development by understanding the organization, getting to contribute in the areas that you're good at. And that's another way of making sure that you get onto that program. Now, there will be the Chartered Governance Institute. They're an international body. So they will have courses and seminars that they're doing in all countries around the world, or many countries around the world. So you can look for the Chartered Governance Institute and say, right, what are they doing? And then the Institute of Directors, they also have courses around the world so that you could say, let me find out what courses I can get myself on, and the Charity Commission and equivalents, so that I can start to build my knowledge. And as you build your knowledge, you'll start to understand that this is what I can offer. And then the other thing I think we need to do, we've hinted at it before, is networking.
Yes.
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 Networking is so important, and networking simply talking to people or let people know, and getting to know people and making sure, as I said earlier, that what you're doing is demonstrating that it's not what you know, it's who you know. So you try and get to find out who people are. Literally in your area, who's the chief exec of the chambers? Who is the chair of the local authority or whatever it might be? Find out who they are.
Mm-hmm.
We're only 6 degrees away from anybody. Remember that 6 degrees of
Yep.
separation?
So true.
Sometimes
Yep.
it's 2 or 3 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that your profile is good. You're doing the things to raise your profile. You've got the integrity, and just get out there. And if you don't go, you'll never know. So you've got
Yeah.
to go to these events. You've got to put yourself out there, and all of that put together could start you on that journey of saying,
Absolutely.
right, let me get on this committee. Put your hand up. When people say, we need somebody to help us out on that committee,
Yeah.
you don't know what you let yourself in for, but put your hand up. Do you know, I started when I was 14.
Wow.
My first committee, I remember, don't tell Judy, Sharon, but it was a girl that I fancied who used to work at this organization. And she said, you can come here and you can volunteer to work on the committee. So my motives weren't good, but that's what I got up to.
By any means necessary.
But that committee experience is what started me off actually at the age of 14, and understanding, contributing at that time. And then I moved on to do it more and more and more.
It's such a good point. It's such a good point, because this is actually something that I teach or educate to my my students, my young people. I always say to them, don't shut yourself off from an opportunity that will move you forward, propel you forward, or just give you a little bit more than what you have now, especially if you don't currently know what you want to do or where you want to go. By just saying yes to this, you don't know where it could take you, because honestly, 6 years ago, I did not know I would be here speaking to the people that I'm speaking to now, sitting in the positions that I'm sitting in now, having the conversations I'm having. But it was because I trusted a mentor or mentors that knew more than me about spaces I had never been in. And I was like, okay, let me trust them and let me feed from them. And then now I'm the person who's feeding back or feeding forward into other people who are at the beginning of their journeys. And so in terms of that exposure of self and making those connections, it could be as simple as jumping on LinkedIn and searching for people and making those connections, dropping them a message. People are not as far away from you as you think.
Absolutely.
And so the moment you start to realize that, and as a mom's always saying to me, from a book cover, from a book that you've never read, feel the fear and do it anyway. If it scares you to speak to someone new, don't let that fear stop you. Just do it anyway and see where it could take you, because you really don't know. And sometimes it's traveling the road unknown that will lead you to the place that you've wanted to get to, but you may get there quicker by just taking a different route or just trusting your gut to take that step and put one foot in front of the other. So it's such a good point, such a solid point you've made, especially for people who are completely new or detached from spaces that they wish they could enter. It's just a case of saying yes to that, or dropping someone a message and saying, hi, do you think you can tell me more about what you do here, over there? Or just being curious. I'm naturally a very curious person, and I'm always telling people, ask questions and lean in and listen and find out. But it's just having that natural curiosity about something new. And then it could kind of build your persona and your exposure and your experience. So I hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just you talking about, getting involved at the age of 14 reminded me of something I'd forgotten, which is I grew up in the church. And so at 14, 15, I was secretary to the committees, whether it was the youth board, this, or the young directors that, and those roles and responsibilities happen in the church. And I say this to the Church of England especially all the time when they're looking for foundation governors, and I say go to the Black-led churches, because you will get the diversity, you will get the shared Christian ethos, and the congregations have a vast number of people who can volunteer in your schools, and especially young people coming through, even if they don't quite qualify, or they're not sure. You say 4 years to a 18-year-old, that's a life sentence. So getting them on as an associate, and say just try it for 12 months, or come in and speak to our students about what your experience is like after leaving school. Build those relationships, because relational capital is one of the
Yes.
biggest things that we need to get our head rounds in terms of governance. Going back to what you were saying in terms of getting to know your local chamber of commerce and your local business forums and all of that. That's all about building relationships, and not just sitting back and thinking that you can send a mail shot out and that's going to give you the engagement and the response that you've had in the past, because the world just doesn't operate like that anymore.
You talking about relational capital just reminded me of something that, honestly, Mom, you're such a mentor to me, because I'm always pulling things that I remember you've said to me just in everyday conversation. But you said your net worth is your network. I remember I grew up hearing that. And
I didn't actually own that, but
no, I'm not saying you owned it, but to me, you were the person that said it. So that,
yeah, you heard it from me first.
I heard it from you. So your name, your initials are at the end of that quote, but your net worth is your network. And so in terms of what Karl was saying, knowing very specific people, or as we've been talking about, leaning in and being fearless and being open to new experiences and finding out who those key people are, because it builds your value over time and what you can then share with someone. Just like if I never made the decision to go for that opportunity as a governor because I was too scared, then I would not be here now. I would not have the value that I have now. But and this is something I took from a speaker called Lisa Nichols, my breakdown was for someone else's breakthrough. So I had to break down those walls, those barriers, for me to then be able to feed into someone who's like, oh, I just heard something that's made me think I'm now inspired to go and try something new, even if it's not to become a school governor. Just by having this conversation here, someone could be listening and they could start something or ask a question or reach out to someone just based on something they've heard here. So yeah, I'm feeding.
Great.
So going back to something you touched on earlier, the Race Equality Code.
Yes.
Now, I'm proud to say that I was there from the beginning. I watched it grow and develop and become the amazing governance code that it is today. So how can organizations in education specifically, how can they positively use it for their benefit?
Yeah, and just a little bit of background to that, Sharon. And over the years, because we digress a little bit so that people can get an overall spark.
Yes,
absolutely.
And over the years, I've developed so many different things. And I remember when I was speaking about this area, one of my colleagues, Paul Samuda, actually, I was talking to him about the race code and saying, I'm thinking of doing something. And he went, Karl, just launch the thing, man, and start talking about it. And I said, but I've not got it written yet. And he says, when has that ever stopped you?
That's it, yeah.
And Sharon, remember when I was going to do my book, when I was launching one of my books, I've written several books, and I said, I'm going to do it at such and such a time. I don't think it was the board game electronically.
Oh, yes.
Karl, you can't do it in that time scale. Just watch me. And that's kind of how I am. But from something which was just an idea, we've had over 55 organizations now adopt the Race Equality Code, from some very large organizations to smallest, so local authorities, NHS Trust, housing associations, chambers of commerce, and Chartered Institute of Housing, and so on. So many organizations. And what we've tried to do is give them a methodology and a way of thinking about representation in board and senior leadership teams. So we've got the website www.theracecode.org that people can still download that code and look at the main principles that are in there. But what we would like them to do is to do what we call the 3-year board challenge. And this is what the education sector can do. So the first thing to do in the board challenge is to take a picture of your board and senior leadership team. That's it. Just take a picture and publish it. Do that, and the picture, as you know, will speak 1,000 words. And we want to check in each year to see what's happening with that picture.
Yeah.
The second thing we want people to do is, and there are pledges within the education sector. There are generic pledges that people can take, like Race at Work Charter. But we have the 12 musts in our race code. So either do the 12 musts, or look at the Race at Work Chart, or the CBI change of age ratio, or the leadership group in education. They've got their charter. Whichever one it is, just do one of them. Yeah. And then the third one is we want you to measure the data. We want you to get down to what the stats are. And in the NHS, they have something called the Workforce Race Equality Standard. There are 9 key measures that get everyone to measure. So I'd recommend that you use those same 9 measures and make sure you're measuring those things. Bespoke it to education, but it's those same 9 measures that we're expecting people to do. So 3 things then. One is, well, the best thing's to do the Race Equality Code anyway. I suggest that anyway. So you can reach out to me at RSM to do that. But despite that, what I would say to you to do is, number 1 is to go on, do the 3-year board challenge, do one of the pledges. Number 3, once you've done that, look at the Workforce Race Equality Standard. And when you reach out to us, we'll give you an ISQ to fill in, an inclusion support questionnaire. And that questionnaire is just capturing data around EDI so that we can benchmark it and then give you back some feedback on it. So we'll get you to fill in an ISQ anyway.
That's brilliant.
I love the take a picture.
That's where you had me.
It's really funny because whenever an organization approaches me to do any work around diversity of race, the first thing I do is go to their website and check them out. I want to see what I'm working with first. And the picture does speak 1,000 words, and it's really important that because the acronym that I use, and I do love the muster, shoulds, and the coulds as well, but the acronym that I use is RACE. What the reality, what is your current reality? What actions are you going to take based on your reality? How are you going to, what is your culture and how are you going to change it? And how will you continue to educate yourself to embrace and embed the changes that you're looking for? So it is important that you start at the beginning. What do you currently look like? Whether it's on paper, whether it's visual, what do you currently look like? And because I do a lot of work in areas where, 98, 99% white British, the question that or the pushback I often get is, well, we haven't got much diversity around here. And I go, well, the internet is free. So in terms of resources and what the school can look and feel like, you can represent diversity, even if you can't access the physical people to do that. But well,
just as you were talking about how the Race Equality Code started, I remember I supported with the social media aspect of it and doing all the graphics and
the Instagram.
Exactly. Like making sure that we were feeding things out in a timely fashion, and it's like you can forget about the things that you've been a part of when you move forward, but when you reflect, you're like, all of these things contributed, all of these were seeds planted as you develop and as you grow. And so it's so amazing to hear like how far it's gone and how much further it's continuing to go and reach people. So that is phenomenal. And I'm definitely ready for takeaways. I don't know if you're ready for takeaways.
Yeah, I'm ready for takeaways. First of all, I just want to say, I knew that I would enjoy this episode, and that hasn't changed. So thank you so much, Carl, for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. I will continue to be tingly about governance, I think, for the rest of my life. And that is no mean feat to have achieved. So thank you for that. I'm going to invite Olivia to do her takeaways first, then yourself, Carl. I will do mine, and then if there's anything final you'd like to say, then by all means, the floor is yours.
So in terms of my takeaway, obviously I'm going to echo what I said at the beginning, and what Mom's just said about being just so grateful for your presence here, having this conversation, because I am taken back to those moments when I was studying on those Saturday mornings, those half days from you, and all the lessons are just pinging off again. And I think the biggest thing that I have taken from you, Carl, is that governance is a huge part of your life. Like it is your life. It is everyday practice. It is the core principles and the pillars that you live by, and just how you continue to move forward and make bite-sized atomic changes so that you can have a greater impact on the world that you exist in, that you in the spaces that you occupy, and have a positive impact on the people around you and the people you come into contact with. And I think that's a big thing for me, just looking at every aspect of my life and think, what governance structures are missing here? And that maybe that's why there's a lack of progress in this area. But also, what have I done well in some areas that I can transfer across? Because you mentioned the term transferable skills earlier when you were describing Mom in terms of what she had and how she's been able to transfer it over here. And it's comes back to a lesson I learned some years ago about how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so I feel like what this conversation reminded me of is to do that evaluation, that last step of SPARS. It's at the end for a reason, because after you do all those other aspects, you need to evaluate your effectiveness as a whole. And so I think my biggest takeaway is knowing that, being reminded that governance is a huge part of your everyday life, and that will then support you with the new spaces that you enter and the new experiences you have. So I just want to be able to say thank you again for you supporting me on my journey as a young person and helping me with my pivot. All the stuff that you had learned up until that point, you fed into me, and I am so grateful for it. I'm able to use it as like leverage to be able to enter spaces that I never would have dreamed of being in had I not fed from an individual like yourself. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. I'm sure there are many other people out there who will have those same sentiments, because you deserve your flowers. You've done a lot of work over the decades, and I am so appreciative as just one person. And I know that there's so many more. So yeah, it's been great having you on the podcast today.
Great. And you know me, there's always three. Whenever I do the thing,
Go ahead.
I've always got a three. So
I've got my pen poised. Let's write these down.
I've got three things. They're all brief, so that's fine. The first thing is governance is everywhere. That's what I want to leave people with as a theme. If you've both said it, that I live, breathe, speak it, because it is everywhere. It's about rules and principles. It's probably my left brain in me. But you can have that creative side as well. So governance is more than compliance is the second thing, because people think it is about ticking the box, and they think that don't be silly, Carl. It can't be just the rules and regulations. What about culture? What about behavior? Yeah, I do understand that, and that's part of my governance framework, because governance, you have to have the compliance, but it's more than compliance. So that's the second thing I wanted to get across, in case people think that I'm a little bit deluded, don't understand the real world, because I do understand the real world and work within it over a number of different categories of people. But the third one, and the biggest one I wanted to do, was to leave you with thanks for allowing me to be on this podcast to talk about the thing that I'm passionate about. You can probably see that I am. And most people have got their busy days. This is one of my very busy days. But as I was saying earlier, when Sharon asked me to come on, it wasn't am I coming, it was when I'm coming, because it was more that it's a request that I knew I had to fulfill. But it wasn't an obligation. I actually really enjoyed, and I'm really proud. Olivia, you speak with wisdom of many years of your age. So as I'm listening to you, and even when you're quoting Field of Fame, anyway, Susan Jeffers, all those books and things are things that I've read over the years and accumulated. Leaders are readers, and I can see in you that you're doing that. So continue to do it, because they're great things to come in the next decades in your life for the things that you're doing. And both of you have inspired me to do something with Kari. So you're Kari's going to cuss you now, because you've inspired me to do something as a result of being on this podcast.
Wow.
So I thank you both for what you're doing for the education community, for the Black Governors Network, the National Black Governors. It's so important because of the underrepresentation we see in board and senior leadership team. And Bob Garrett says the fish rots from the head. Well, he didn't say it, but he chose that title for his book.
Yeah.
And if we don't get it right at the top, then we're going to see that we don't get the changes we want to see across all of these institutions. So the outcomes of good governance are better educated students from all communities. But I really, really want to make sure those underrepresented, the ones that are the lowest at every statistic, and I'm not going to have to go through on this one about starting off at this level and coming out the education system that level and being excluded, all those statistics. We are the ones who can change it. So thank you very much for all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karl. My takeaway is just to continue to be ambassadorial. I love representing my race. I love representing the governance space as a professional in that space. And that is what I want to continue to do, to make it the norm in conversation, so that I aim for a day where I can say I'm a governor, or I'm a trustee, or I'm a NED, and people don't say, what's that? That's my aim. But thank you so much for joining us on the Governors Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe via your preferred streaming platform. The Governors Podcast is a brand of the legal entity Education Governance Solutions Limited, and a free training resource for anyone. So if you know someone who is interested in becoming a governor or a trustee, please share this podcast with them. And if you'd like to get in touch with us directly with questions or comments, then drop us an email at thegovernorspodcast@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on social media platforms at The Governors Podcast. Let's connect.